So welcome to the show, Mike. So glad to have you.
Jen, thanks for having me on. My pleasure.
Yeah. So I've been geeking out on your podcast and listening to you on some other podcasts. And I have so many more questions than I thought I had when we initially spoke and I asked you to be on the podcast. But before we even dive into red light, can you just talk to people about what red light therapy is and why it's important for those people that aren't even aware of it, or people who have heard about red light because it's kind of been in vogue and been talked about for the last few years? Yet I don't think a lot of people really understand the power of it and why it is important and valuable.
Sure. So at an extremely basic level, red and near infrared light is essentially two spectra of light that's pulled from full spectrum sunlight. So back in the day, before we had technology and light bulbs and electricity, we were naturally outside much, much more. Thus, we were exposed to full spectrum sunlight on a much more consistent basis than we are nowadays, where we spend upwards of 95% plus indoors out of the sun. And of course there's a negative connotation associated with sunshine, especially in the skin world, dermatology, plastic surgery, and all that. And rightfully so. There are some negative effects of excessive UV light exposure, but if you're not getting exposed to sunlight, again, you're not getting exposed to those red and near infrared light spectra, which we'll go into and why that's important. But the point being, the only thing that makes red light therapy special, or why it works so well, is because you're simply correcting that deficiency that your mitochondria, the powerhouse of your cells, the battery of your cells, that needs that red and near infrared light. So again, when we're not outside, we're not getting now those two important wavelengths in red and near infrared that our mitochondria need to produce energy. And that's in a nutshell really what red light therapy is. It's very basic. There are some nuances for if you want to treat certain conditions, but once you understand the basics, it's a pretty simple piece of technology.
Okay, so when it comes to the visible light spectrum, we all remember Roy G. Biv. So why is red light the best visible wavelength for mitochondria? I mean, why not orange or yellow or
Yeah.
blue? Like, do we know?
Well, that's a good question. And at least to my knowledge, I don't know why that's the case. Like, why not blue or green or yellow? Other than, kind of digging into the archives of my brain here. Like, we're talking about visible wavelengths, ultraviolet and violet. Well, I guess ultraviolet's invisible, but violet is the most furthest to the left if we're looking at the spectrum, correct? So it's the shortest wavelength, thus it's going to penetrate the least. And that's why the UV light, or violet light, but UV light can give you those excessive skin burns, because that's the only depth it's penetrating to. It's not going any further than the very superficial layers of your skin. So then on the flip side, we have red light, which is on the far right side of that spectrum. So it's the longest wavelength of the visible spectrum. Thus, it's going to penetrate deeper than any of the other colors. I'm not saying that's why it works, but
maybe it hits the cells more.
Right. There's a little more depth to it. But most importantly, for whatever reason, it's the red and the near infrared that the mitochondria specifically respond to. They don't respond to, orange or yellow or green, or even mid infrared and far infrared, which is commonly seen in infrared saunas. It's specifically that red and the invisible near infrared wavelength. I don't know why, but
that's how they work through the mitochondria.
Right.
Okay. So we're really focusing on mitochondrial health here, is what you're saying.
Correct.
So yeah. So can you talk about why mitochondrial health is so important? I remember about 10 years ago, I was doing fitness training and fitness competitions maybe 6 or 7 years ago. And I remember talking to one of the trainers in the gym and be like, it seems like mitochondria are the most important thing, and he's like, no, they produce all these reactive oxygen species. And, it was just such low level speaking, but I was kind of like, things were turning in my head and I'm thinking about these amazing mitochondria. And now over the last few years, they've gotten so much publicity because mitochondria are related to, like, poor mitochondrial health is associated with a lot of disease states. So that's why, not just that, but also to optimize your energy and your vitality, you want to have good mitochondrial health. And that's how red light comes to play. So talk about how that works.
Well, quite
You're excited. Like, I wish everyone could just see him right now because he looks so excited.
my mitochondria have gotten the red light therapy today. No, but in a nutshell, Jen, I mean, you said it very well and eloquently and succinctly. I mean, I could go on for 20 minutes just talking about what you spoke of there, but I'll try to add on a little bit.
Please.
So, yeah, let's start with mitochondrial health. Again, in a nutshell, the mitochondria are the batteries in your cells. And when they're not being recharged on a consistent basis, they can become dysfunctional. You have a couple of dysfunctional mitochondria, not a big deal. But when it becomes a preponderance of dysfunctional mitochondria per cell, then that's where you start having the snowball effect of dysfunctional tissue, dysfunctional organs, and then dysfunctional systems, such as the skin. And so the top mitochondrial researcher in the world, Dr. Doug Wallace, he's been looking at mitochondrial health and research for over 4 decades at this point. And couple of the most important quotes from him are that the more energy you have per cell, the longer you're going to live, the healthier you're going to be. So increased longevity, increased health span, simply because your cells have more energy than not. On the flip side, the less energy your cells have, or the more dysfunctional your mitochondria are, because, backing up here a couple of steps, the mitochondria produce 95% of the energy in your body. So when we're talking about energy production, it really does come down to the mitochondria. So then back to the current topic, the more dysfunctional mitochondria you have per cell, the less energy you have per cell. Thus, the quicker you're going to age, the more likely you're going to come down with some sort of disease. Because again, according to Dr. Doug Wallace, around 80% of modern diseases and illnesses are directly tied to mitochondrial dysfunction. And Jen, you said you checked out my talk when I was down in Miami. And if you check out the PowerPoint slide where I'm talking about this point, it's a laundry list of things that of diagnoses and illnesses and conditions that everyone's heard of, from Parkinson's to all types of neurological conditions to mood disorders, and so on and so forth. But they're all tied to mitochondrial dysfunction, which essentially, back to the topic at hand, is poor energy. And we're not talking about energy like drinking a cup of coffee and you're hyped up. It's the energy that normal physiology needs to be carried out, such as reproduction, growth, repair, and then degradation, just recycling the mitochondria, recycling cells. So when you don't have the energy to carry out these day-to-day activities, then these, on the micro level, they start to build up over time. And again, that's where you have too many dysfunctional cells that make up a dysfunctional tissue that makes up a dysfunctional organ system. And it's not until you get that diagnosis or you're feeling very ill that it's like, what the heck's going on? But the root cause ultimately really does come down to dysfunctional mitochondria. And then back to the, episode or the podcast at hand here, that's where red light therapy comes into play. It's simply light that, when used correctly, it's very simple and very safe, non-invasive, but when used correctly, you're going to be able to, again, correct the deficiency in this red or near infrared light in your body, which is going to give your mitochondria more energy. You can even reverse mitochondrial dysfunction. So you can reverse some of these conditions, and it's simply with light. So red light therapy, like you said, it's becoming more popular over the last handful of years. But I think it's podcasts like this that you're doing where we're able to get the information out to the masses, so they're able to understand that you don't necessarily need, I hate to say this because I'm a physical therapist, I'm part of the medical field, but you don't necessarily need medical intervention. You don't necessarily need medications. Yes, there's a time and place for them, but I think this pandemic the past couple of years has kind of woken people up to putting their health first and being, better advocates for themselves versus relying on the quote unquote system to help out with their health. And it's technologies like red light therapy and other type of, modalities out there that people can use simply in the comfort of their home and do pretty darn well from themselves, if not, help optimize their health overall.
Right. Yeah. Oh, there's so much to unpack there. That's great. I'd probably hit rewind 4 times and listen to that again. So, what I hear, I love the fact that over the last year or two, I think what a lot of us have done and a lot of us have realized, and I've always realized in the medical field, well, not always, the first 10 years of, I was very dogmatic and traditional. And then, after listening to patients time and time again, you actually learn, what really happens and works outside of the office and your recommendations and affects people. And I think what we're learning to do, and that's why I've gotten interested in this biohacking community, is because we find these things in nature that support our body to optimize itself. And that's what the red light therapy does, and what you're doing with your BioLight systems. And you mentioned earlier that sunlight obviously provides a lot of these benefits. I know as a dermatologist, I'm not anti-sun. I don't usually recommend getting the high real estate areas of like your face where you're going to get wrinkles into the UV radiation that's going to penetrate and cause collagen disruption and skin breakdown and wrinkles and brown spots and all the things all of us don't want. But I do recommend getting, for someone who's fair skin, getting torso, 10, 15 minutes 3 times a week. If you're darker skin, you need longer periods of time. And then it depends on your latitude, obviously, right? But how do you decide how often? And I know you have an amazing ebook. I think we could put the link in the show notes on your protocols, your recommended protocols for the red light therapy. But how does someone know, in general terms, like, are there certain times of year when you do more treatments or less treatments? Can you do too much of a treatment? Like, how do you know? Let's start with like skin, for instance. Just say I want to say I have a panel and I want to treat all of my skin. What would be the recommendations for that?
Yeah, those are good questions, because that's where kind of the nuances come into play. Uh, and that's why I developed the ebook, because I didn't see anything else out there that was a good resource for people to go to, because different treatments do require different parameters. There's only a handful of parameters, but they do need to change based on what you're treating. So one of the parameters is which lights or light do you use? For skin, you're only going to use red light, because red light doesn't penetrate any deeper than the skin, whereas near infrared does penetrate deeper than the skin. So whenever you're treating anything deeper than the skin, be it, muscles, bone, organs, then you're going to want to utilize near infrared. So that's one variable. Another one is distance from the device, because the further you are away from the device, the less light power is going to be captured by your body. So you can change that by being closer or further. So with skin treatments, you actually want to be furthest away compared to any treatments I've seen, just because skin requires the lowest dosage. So you're going to have red light only, about 15 to 18 inches away, at least with BioLight devices. But most of within that spectrum, or within that range, it's going to be consistent across devices, 15 to 18 inches, whereas most other treatments are 6 to 12 inches. And then you have duration. Well, again, with skin being superficial, it doesn't need much of a dosage to get optimal effect. Treatment dosages are mostly between 90 seconds and 3 minutes. I mean, they're short, and more is not better. More is not going to lead to damage per se or anything negative, but you're probably not going to get the results you're looking for. You might be
What do you
using
mean?
Meaning, let's say you're going for anti-wrinkle or anti-aging,
Yeah.
and you treat for 10 minutes every single day. And all of a sudden, or not all of a sudden, but a week or 2 or 3 goes by and you don't notice any changes in your skin. You're like, what the heck? Red light therapy doesn't work for me. But it was really that you're just over treating. And so it's like there's a bell curve where on the left side of the bell curve, if the dosage is too low, you're not going to get benefits. But on the right side of that bell curve, on the far right, if the dosage is too high, same thing. You're not going to get the results you're looking for. So it's about finding the dosage under that bell curve where it's not too little, it's not too much, it's right in between, meaning you're going to get the results you're looking for. So,
Okay, wait. So I want to deep dive into that a little bit. So,
sure.
what's the mechanism of action on how red light improves collagen stimulation? And I mean, I was trained that collagen takes 3 months to be stimulated, right? So 3 to 6 months. So, I mean, noticing an effect in a few days to a couple of weeks is great, but the hard, actual molecular, at the cellular
Right.
level, you're going to see an effect, in a few months. So, What's the mechanism of action? Is it working at the it can't be working at the mitochondrial level for skin.
Sure.
It is to
Yeah,
stimulate hydroxyproline.
Yeah, because that's another good point is that mitochondria is in every single cell in your body outside of red blood cells. So they're gonna be in the cells in your skin. Meaning, yeah, if you're doing red light therapy and optimizing mitochondria at the skin tissue level, then its ability to change or again have the energy to carry out its day-to-day function, fight off any excessive free radical production or any excessive UV radiation. Red light therapy is very anti-inflammatory, pro-circulatory, two things which are super important, of course, with skin health.
Yeah.
Do anything to reduce inflammation. And what I learned, especially with cupping, anything to improve circulation to the skin is going to help keep it nourished and get the garbage out, get the healthy nutrients in. So you get a pro-circulatory benefit, you get the mitochondrial health. As far as specifically why is a pro-elastin, pro-collagen, I don't know how instantaneous that is, but again, in the research, people are getting smoother skin, healthier looking skin within 7 days.
It sounds
It's
like
not quicker sometimes.
Yeah, that sounds like more like a circulation sort of issue where
Right.
you're you're enhancing delivery of nutrients and oxygen. None of this is pre-planned. I'm just like thinking out loud here.
Yeah,
And
no, I
then
agree with you though.
Yeah, and you're removing the
Pro-circulatory.
toxins and the byproducts. And then it sounds like long term, it's stimulating the fibroblasts to produce collagen. Okay, so I've been screwing this up. I've been I've been doing I basically sit in front of the panel every morning while I work on the computer for like 15 minutes, but I put on the IR and the R. So is that more for overall health rather than just skin health? Okay. So
Right.
okay.
I mean, you're still going to get skin health results because you're using red light.
Yeah.
But the inclusion of near infrared means your body's absorbing more light energy. So yeah, if you're doing that for about 10 minutes, it's not going to be, let's say, as effective or as efficient to get results that you would otherwise using the protocols. Like if you were, I believe the protocol is something like for skin health is like 15 to 18 inches away, about 90 seconds to 3 minutes, 3 to 4 days a week. This isn't something you need to do every single day. In fact, you shouldn't. It's just like exercise. You shouldn't be vigorously exercising every single day. You need to give your cells and your body time to repair and recover for the next bout. And to your point, I think you spoke about earlier in the podcast, someone mentioning that mitochondria produce, free radicals or reactive oxygen species. That's a fact. That's the number one spot in the entire body for free radical production, just inherently by the way that the mitochondria work to produce energy. It's when it becomes excessive that those free radicals get loose or wreak havoc on our body. But that also, that's funny you brought that up, because there's also something called the mitochondrial theory of aging. And the main tenet is that when it's excessive production of the free radicals, that actually accelerates the not the healing process, the aging process. So it's kind of a fine line. You want the mitochondria to be doing their producing energy on a normal basis, but it's when it becomes excessive that the free radicals become unfriendly.
Okay, so I heard you speak at the Biohacking Congress and mention that kind of pre-treating your skin before you go outside with the red light therapy through this process I think you're describing right now can help protect your skin somewhat from UV radiation.
Right. So yeah, there's a concept called preconditioning, and you can do it with a handful of things. And I think as the research continues to come out, we're going to find more and more things you can precondition with red light therapy. One of them is your brain for, let's say you have a cognitively intensive task, whether it's, a test at school or a big day at work or a meeting or what have you, or an important podcast interview. So you can use near infrared on your brain to enhance your concentration and ability to carry out tasks like that. You have exercise. So you would just irradiate the muscles you're going to be working the most with red light or near infrared. And then your muscles are going to have more power, more endurance, more strength, and they're going to recover quicker. So it'll be less sore the next day. And then to your point with skin, yeah, it's somewhat of a, I wouldn't call it a sunscreen, but it does allow you to be outside longer, to be exposed to UV radiation longer without getting a sunburn. So does that mean you're less likely to have the UV radiation consequences of excessive sun exposure? I don't know. I'd kind of leave that up to you. I've heard both sides of the fence where as long as you're not getting the sunburn, then it's not an issue.
There's so many variables. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just be curious on your thoughts on that.
Oh yeah, there's so many variables when it comes to that. So typically every day when we're alive, you know, when our body's metabolizing things and we're exposed to poor air quality or chemicals in our diet or the UV radiation, we're having mutations. We're making mutations all the time. And if our immune system is healthy and our body can keep things in balance, we correct those errors of metabolism all the time. So, I mean, going back to the free radicals that you had talked about and how red light can benefit you with that. I mean, the more we have that under control, the less our body's going to have to, you know, survey and monitor and correct and that sort of thing. So like I see people with a lot of sun damage who don't get skin cancer because they're very, very healthy on the inside. And their body can keep those precancers at bay. And I see other people with, you know, a moderate amount of chronic skin damage, and they're getting skin cancers left and right because maybe they have a lymphoma or they have a colon cancer or they've got kidney failure or they have some sort of other troubling condition in their body that their body is busy taking care of, that it doesn't have the energy or the resources to correct, you know, those errors of metabolism topically. So, I mean, I try to do everything that I can to help with the sun, like obviously, you know, a diet high in phytochemicals. I take a supplement called HelioCare. I try to wear sleeves on my arms, but I do expose my skin, but I don't have a burn or tan, you know. I mean, I feel like you can prevent that somewhat internally. Whereas if you're having really processed foods high in nut seed oils, you're going to burn, you know, your skin is just going to be cooked. So it's multifactorial.
Totally.
Yeah.
Are you a fan of astaxanthin for
Yeah.
some sort of sunscreen in a way? Because I heard that from Dr. Sandra Kaufman. She's a huge advocate for astaxanthin almost as like a liquid sunscreen, where kind of like red light therapy, it allows you to be outside longer without getting the sunburn type of thing. Not saying it's the end all be all, but you start compounding a couple of these things, you know, and it allows you to be outside. I know are you a big advocate of sunscreen? Like,
I wear it on my face and my neck and my hands every single day. But as far as astaxanthin, I love it. I love astaxanthin. And polyphenols, I do supplement with those. I take between 4 and 6 milligrams of astaxanthin with krill oil and some fish oil in the morning with my bulletproof coffee, you know, just all the fat and the curcumin and stuff. And I think it kind of helps, and it gives you a nice rosy glow too. And also polypodium leucotomus, which is in a supplement called Sunsafe RX or HelioCare. It's a natural fern block extract. We can't say it's an SPF because there's so many variables, but it's like having a Mediterranean diet and, you know, foods that are rich in colors and, you know, phytonutrients and things like that are going to help increase the natural SPF of your skin. It's not really measurable because it's, you know, it's too variable from person to person in your baseline skin tone. Okay, I wanted to jump back really quickly on mitochondria, and then I want to go into some of the other protocols. So we know that our mitochondria come from our mothers. So like if your mother's side of the family was unhealthy, are you doomed, or do those people benefit more from red light and other lifestyle things? Like, how do you take that into effect when, you know, trying to come up with a program for yourself?
Yeah, that's a pretty deep question. By no means are you doomed, because of course your own personal, like you alluded to, your own personal lifestyle factors and habits are ultimately what's going to dictate your health, because there's this thing called epigenetics where really we're not tied down or bound to our DNA or our nuclear DNA, because that would make up, let's say, around 10 to 15% of our of our health, according to Dr. Doug Wallace, back to the
Yep.
mitochondrial researcher.
Wait,
Like I said,
so hold on. The nuclear DNA, epigenetics plays a role there. But what I'm wondering, does epigenetics play a role in mitochondrial DNA?
well, sure, because in the sense that, well, I guess are you talking about having a specific diagnosis? Or are you just talking about looking at your
No.
family tree?
Yeah, just looking at your family tree. I want to be hopeful here and have people realize, like, hey, it doesn't really matter,
Right.
because the epigenetics, we've had a podcast on that. People can go listen to that again. But basically, what Dr. Mike's saying is that only 85%, only about 10, 15% of how your life works out is based on your genetics. The other 85 to 90 is basically the decisions and the choices that you make every
Exactly.
day. And that's where the red light therapy can come into play.
Now let's look. Yeah, that's exactly correct, Jen. But if, let's say, you look at your mom, you look at your grandma, and potentially your great grandmother, if you look at their health and longevity, that gives you an idea of your potential. So, my grandma just passed away, but she was almost 91. I don't remember the age of her mom, but I believe she was in her late 80s or early 90s. My mom's still around in her late 60s, doing very well, very healthy. So that tells me that the mitochondria I've inherited likely have a pretty nice, robust potential for longevity, provided I live my life in a healthy way. Whereas if there's a family history of early death for health related reasons, not just like traumatic events, let's say like getting run over by a bus, but that can give you a clue of your potential longevity. But like we just spoke about with epigenetics, your lifestyle factors, your day-to-day decisions are going to have the biggest impact. So I guess the counter to that point is my dad's family had a pretty low overall lifespan, to the point I think he's outlived most of them, and he's in his late 60s as well. He's quite healthy, so he should be able to live several more decades provided he lives healthfully. So the point being, again, even the health of your mitochondria, it does give you, again, that potential that you either have a high potential for longevity or maybe you don't, but you can supersede that low potential by integrating a lot of things that boost your mitochondrial health. And one of those is red light therapy, but there's a lot of other ways you can as well.
Okay. If we have time, I'd love to get into that. I just wanted to cover some of the other protocols. So
Yeah.
you mentioned that, for skin health, red light therapy, 15 to 18 inches for about 1.5 to 3 minutes, 4 times a week or so is beneficial. Now, do you have to do the therapy in the areas where you want to see the results? Or, I've heard some people say like you do it anywhere and you get the results everywhere, but I can't understand how that would work.
So you do get systemic results to a certain degree, but if you're trying to reduce swelling in your left ankle, you probably shouldn't be doing red light on your right wrist to get you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's enough research to show chemically, or at the physiological level, there are things going on systemically with your body. But to your point, if you're trying to do that anti-aging skin treatment for your face, well, you got to target your face, and in general you're going to get the most effective results by directly attacking the area that you want to see results. There's some, if you're very savvy with the nervous system, which, you didn't want to talk about dry needling and we won't here, but I'm just saying, if you're savvy with the nervous system, there are ways to treat other places. Like, let's say, sorry about that. You can treat up and down your arm and get results in your shoulder and neck, potentially.
Okay.
Kind of like just basically doing, like laser acupuncture. And that's what they're doing, is they're doing red light laser, and they're just doing certain spots in the body to get results in other places.
Nice.
So that's a potential, but that
If
was
you
also
have a panel, just expose the whole area.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about brain health. You had mentioned brain health, and this morning I was listening to you on another podcast, or I was listening to your podcast, if anybody wants a deeper dive into this topic, definitely check out Mike's podcast, The Red Light Report. There's so many cool topics on there, and you're talking about the brain health, and I'm sitting there with my head, against the panel and I'm thinking, okay, well, what part of my brain do I expose? Because I do neurofeedback with Dr. Drew Pearson from 40 Years of Zen. And before, it's really exhausting. I have to tell you, like neurofeedback, it's hard work, right?
I've heard that.
And we're doing everything from cerebellum to, networks and, in the cerebral cortex. So what area of my brain do I expose? Like, how do you position it? And then can it get through hair? Will it help hair stimulate the growth? Because we use that in laser caps. I mean, what's the logistics behind doing it properly?
So a lot of the research that's looking at, let's say, mental health, anxiety, stress, depression, and even Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, they're doing it to the frontal lobe and they're getting phenomenal results. So the front of your brain, and some research even shows that targeting the right frontal lobe may lead to better results than the left, although a lot of research does both. So the point being, frontal lobe, which is nice because there's not any hair there. That might be part of the reason why, but they are getting great results by targeting the frontal lobe.
And is that 6 to 12 inches?
Yeah, I would have that closer to 6 inches, as close as possible. If you have a handheld device, I would put it right on your skin because these don't have any EMFs at all. Whereas anything plugged into electricity is going to have a little bit. So you want to be, 3 to 6 inches away.
Okay.
But if it's handheld and it's running on a battery, I would put it almost right onto the brain there, because even then, I forget what the number is, but a very small percentage of light actually make it through your skull. But that little amount of light makes a big difference to your brain and to your brain cells, because back to mitochondria that produce energy, it makes sense that the most energy dependent or energy thirsty tissues are going to have the most mitochondria. So your brain by far utilizes the most energy, and it is the most mitochondrial dense. So again, any light that does get through that skull when you're treating, it's going to make a phenomenal difference. And that's why people can get really nice relief, whether it's like I mentioned, anxiety, stress, or even some relief, or kind of mitigate the symptoms of Alzheimer's or Parkinson's.
Okay, that's so cool. That's really cool. Is there anywhere they can position it or do too much of it to increase anxiety or cause any problems? Have there been any studies showing that? Because we always think more is better.
Yeah. Well, so the thing that I think people would run into with too much would be the detox symptoms, which would be like the headaches or nausea or excessive fatigue. That's what happens when you do too much red light therapy, or when you initially begin red light therapies, you might get those detox symptoms. As far as exacerbating like stress or anxiety or whatnot, I mean, it's an N=1 game. Everything in health and the biohacking world is, the point being, you need to see how you respond and adjust accordingly. That's why the protocols I have in that book, the ranges are decently wide on some of the protocols, partly because people need to try out the range to see what works best for them. But secondly, that's what the research has given me, because all my protocols are based on the research. So they're quite wide. And again, as research goes on, I think those are going to get more and more defined and more specific and better. But for now, that's kind of what I have.
Well, that's why I reached out to you, because I love that you put something together with protocols, because people don't really want to give protocols out there. And I feel like you can have the right thing, but if you don't use it properly, you're not going to get the results. And I mean, we're still figuring these things out. And that's why there's a wide range, and attuning to your body and having that interoception is so important. So as far as like so with the brain thing, do you do it? So if I was to do it before neurofeedback, or if someone was doing a presentation, what's the period of time they do it before? How long should they do it? And how often?
Yeah, so any type of preconditioning is typically about 30 minutes or so, or sooner. I mean, you could probably do 60 minutes, but 30 minutes or sooner. So whether that's exercise or going out in the sun or preconditioning your brain. And then for anything with the brain, you want to do near infrared only. It would be wasted energy to use red on your skin. So you want to get as much light, near infrared light, to your brain. Again, as close as possible. As long as you're outside of kind of that EMF range. You don't want to be exposing yourselves to more EMFs than we already are with 5G and Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. So yeah, about 6 inches, unless you have a handheld right on there. And then again, that kind of dictates your time. If you can do it right on the scalp, then you could probably do 6 to 8 minutes. If you're closer to 6 inches, then you probably want to do closer to like 8 to 10, 8 to 12 minutes.
Okay. And then if you're for athletic performance, you do it on the muscle. So if you're doing like a
Correct.
leg day, you want to do, and it's just IR as well, or are you doing red and infrared?
A lot of the research does combo.
Okay.
Just thinking about it, based on what we've talked about, it would make sense to do just near infrared. But again, the current research, a lot of it's been combo.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then would you do it post workout for recovery too, or you're just talking, you do both?
No, I'm nodding my head because that's a great
Oh.
question. In that presentation I did in Miami, there the research kind of goes through the fact that there's two types of damage when you exercise. There's something called primary damage, which is where you have that physical, mechanical breakdown of the muscle fibers. And then you have secondary damage of exercise, which is that ensuing inflammatory response that happens with, normal exercise. And so if you do the red light therapy just after exercise, you're only going to be helping with that secondary damage. But if you do it like preconditioning style, so you do it before exercise and not after, just before, then you're going to help with both primary and secondary damage of exercise.
Okay. Okay. And that's why, with cold immersion, they're recommending it 24 hours after because we want to have that inflammation after exercise.
Exactly.
Okay. Oh, so that's beautiful. So precondition with the red light, and then you can incorporate some cold immersion the next day.
Love cold immersion. Yeah. Big fan.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. On that note, jumping around here a little bit, but on that note, like, is there anything that the listeners can do to complement the benefits of red light therapy, like hyperbaric, cold immersion, sauna, grounding, and even some
Everything you just
supplements?
mentioned is beautiful. I love all of it. I live right
Okay.
next to a river, so I go jump in it when I can.
So
Ice cold,
jealous.
straight
I'm
from
in the
mountains of
desert.
Montana. Yeah. So there's that. I have a hyperbaric chamber, so I'm pretty fortunate there that I get to use that on a consistent basis. And using red light therapy and hyperbaric back to back is a magical combo. I interviewed Dr. Jason Saunders, who's considered one of the top, hyperbaric experts in the country here. And he's a huge advocate. It doesn't necessarily matter which order you go in. His hunch is doing red light first to get that vasodilation, because when you do go into hyperbaric, that does cause vasoconstriction. So probably do red light first, then hyperbaric. That's a good combo. But yeah, anything involving like light, water, magnetism. So magnetism, to your point, would be grounding. Anything to induce free electrons. So grounding, you're getting electrons from the earth.
Explain what grounding is, because I often wonder if I'm grounding properly, because we've got desert here, rocks, cacti, and cement. So
yeah.
yeah.
So to my knowledge, anything but concrete will be grounding as long as it's on the earth. So you can be in the trees, you can be on rocks, you can be on cement, you can be on obviously dirt and grass.
Wait, cement is grounding or it's not grounding?
Is asphalt is not.
Asphalt's not. Okay.
Like blacktop, but concrete is.
Okay.
So simply barefoot, no socks on, nothing. Your foot's connected to the earth, and that connection from your skin to the earth, whatever you're touching, you're going to be gaining electrons. And so that all ties back to the mitochondria. We don't have to go super deep into this because this gets really geeky, but the mitochondria have what's called the electron transport chain, and it's your ability to transport as many electrons as possible through that electron transport chain that ultimately leads to energy, or ATP. So when you're disconnected from the earth, when you're drinking dead tap water, when you're not exposed to sunlight, you're relinquishing a lot of potential electrons into your body. Thus, your mitochondria aren't going to be producing as much energy. So as sciencey as it is, there's some huge implications there. So to your point, again, anything to do with light, water, magnetism. So light, sunshine, water, drink some hydrogen rich or deuterium depleted water, and then magnetism, whether it's like a PEMF mat, just basic grounding like we're talking about, is fantastic. Things like that. The more you stack those, the more robust your results are going to be. And or if you're a healthy person, you're just going to be helping your potential for increased longevity and just an improved health span.
Right. So simple too. Like I used to live in
It's all nature.
Hawaii. I know it is. It's all nature. The more we're in touch with nature, the better we feel and do. And I know there's a lot of tech and there's a lot of gear out there, and it's meant to complement what you don't get from nature, or you can't get from nature. So
Exactly. Yep.
I love that. And, as far as supplements, are there any that you're a big fan of? I could see David Sinclair's Lifespan book behind you. So I'm wondering if you take resveratrol and NMN.
Yeah, funny topic. Are you familiar with Sean Wells?
Yeah, I love Sean. He's great.
Yeah, so Sean spoke at the conference down in Miami, and really one of the biggest takeaways I took from his
Let me guess, dihydroxyberberine.
oh, dihydroberberine.
Dihydroberberine. Thank you. He loves
So
that.
his topic was like the 10 best supplements you've never heard of. And yeah, that was like his number one to take if you were to take just one of those that he talked about, which I do. But the biggest thing I took away actually, related to David Sinclair is taking niacin, 500 milligrams of full flush niacin twice a day seems to be as advantageous as taking NMN or NR. And the reason why that's important for the audience that's not familiar is niacin is dirt cheap compared to NMN. And so if it's going to lead to comparable results with NAD production, which is tied to energy production with the mitochondria, then why wouldn't you take niacin unless you don't want to deal with the flush? But that was a pretty interesting piece of research he alluded to.
Did he say any? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, ever since that presentation, I've been taking just niacin, and I have kind of gotten off the NMN bandwagon for now.
And you feel good?
Oh, I feel great.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm doing a lot of things, but yeah.
How about like niacinamide or nicotinamide? Because I'm one of those, you can see I'm pretty ready as it begins. So I get really, really flushed with it. So I can't do niacin. And the price point's a lot sweeter for people if they want to try niacin instead of NMN. But so what about like nicotinamide? Yeah.
Nicotinamide, I believe that's the one you would want to take. I listened to another one of his talks yesterday about psychedelics, and he alluded to that same research. And I forget all the different types, but nicotinamide is one you would want to take.
Okay.
And he also was a big advocate of the full flush. So it's one of those things you actually get used to. I still have a little bit of a flush, but the first 3 to 4 days are very intense. And after consistent usage, it's not bad at all.
Okay. I may have to just try to go through it. That's good to know. I know there's good literature on nicotinamide too in patients who have had multiple skin cancers, non-melanoma skin cancers like basal cell cancer and squamous cell cancer. We have them take 500 milligrams twice a day, and it reduces their rate of future skin cancers. So I'm wondering if it's working by similar mechanisms to what we're discussing today, because we really don't know.
Yeah,
I wouldn't either. That's really great. Okay.
On your part.
Yeah, really neat. Okay, what other supplements? Anything else? Or
oh man, I mean, this is a rabbit hole you can go down.
Top 3.
So deep. I'm just saying, like, from a consumer standpoint or from a health standpoint, there's so many you can take. And I just interviewed Barton Scott, and his thing is, test, don't guess. And the reason I bring that up is because you can be taking so many supplements, but do you really know if you need them, or do you really know if they're doing what you think they're doing? And ever since I learned about, light therapy, learning primarily from Dr. Jack Cruz, I don't know if you're familiar with him. The less I've been taking supplements, the more I've been getting in touch with, nature, or just getting nutrients as much as I can from whole food. So I've really dialed back my supplements, but the ones I take that are kind of like non-negotiable for me are the astaxanthin, turmeric or curcumin, like spirulina, grass-fed organ, capsules.
What brand do you use for that? I haven't started using.
Oh, the one from New Zealand. I forget exactly what it's called. I could tell you after the podcast, but I forget. It's one that's
the one Paul Saladini recommends, or Saladino?
Gosh.
Yeah, I don't know. Let me know after, because I'm curious. I can't seem to cook it, so I'm gonna have to take the capsules. Okay. What about
Those are the ones I take consistently, and then the niacin.
You don't do magnesium?
That's one of like the minerals I should, and I keep having it brought up in my life from people I talk to time and time again. So it's probably time I pull the trigger, because that is a super important one.
Right. And 50% of us are deficient in it just because of the way we farm and stuff. So, okay. So for people that are listening, and they're checking out, your website and, can you go over some of the devices you have? And I know the one that I'm really excited to try is the Guardian for the mouth. And if you could talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, not to jettison that question quite yet. It's ancestral supplements for the
Oh, thank you.
grass-fed beef
That
organs.
Okay. Yeah, that seems to be the main company. It's funny. Ancestral is such an easy word, but you can't remember that one. Okay. I know. If it was
But
like Omicron or something, we'd
question
remember it.
I know. So about the devices, yeah, the Guardian is our newest product we've released. That's behind me here. If you're watching on video, it's the first mouth guard to integrate both red and near infrared light. So the red light therapy research on oral health is astounding. Not just what it does for oral health, but potentially systemic. If you talk to a biological dentist, they're going to tell you the implications of your oral health has impact on your entire body. So that's an exciting product, the Guardian. And then essentially we have, 4 different sizes of like panels or devices. So there's a handheld device called the Shine, which is kind of like the size of an iPhone. So that's great for people who are constantly on the go or traveling or just want to do spot treatments. So for example, like your audience, if they're primarily wanting to do like treating their face, that's all you would need, because that's going to cover that entire real estate right there. But if you're looking to treat, let's say, a third or a half of your body or just larger chunks at once, then you'd want to move the next size up, which is called the Recharge Plus, which is like the size of a sheet of paper, kind of like 10 by 11 inches or so. And then there's a couple of full body models, and one is about 3 feet tall, which when you're standing 6 to 12 inches away, the light's going to spread and cover a majority of your body. And then there's one that's about a little over 5 feet tall by 2.5 feet wide. That's more for people who are working in clinics or med spas, or people who just want, just superior coverage. And all the devices, all the panels have the same light or LED quality. It's simply the size of the panel, thus the amount of your body you can treat at once. That's the differentiating factor.
Right. So if you had a smaller device that maybe you could use to travel,
yep.
You can get, if you wanted to sit there and move it around all day, obviously you can get benefits from it, but the size of the panel is going to just treat the whole area at this one time period. So how does the mechanism of action work with the BioLite, with the Guardian? I'm looking at the box.
So the answer is the same for everywhere in the body. So it's treating more so the gums than the teeth, but there's even plenty of research showing that can help with, hypersensitivity. It can potentially help mitigate or prevent enamel erosion. And I think that has to do with the acidity or alkalinity in your mouth, because electrons are going to make your body more alkaline, whereas too many protons is going to make your body acidic or inflammatory. So just like all the other products or all the types of red light therapy, for your mouth, it's going to be, pro-circulatory. So it's going to help improve circulation in your mouth or in your gums, which is great for improving gum strength and those types of people that easily have, bleeding gums. That'll help with that. Anti-inflammatory, so that can help out with a number of things. And then again, mitochondrial health. And actually, lastly, it can help improve the balance of your oral microbiome. People are familiar with the gut microbiome, but same thing in your mouth. You want the balance of good versus bad bacteria to be correct. And you can argue that actually one might affect the other. So if you have a poor gut microbiome, it could actually lead to poor oral microbiome and vice versa. So, and then speaking of gut microbiome, like say you want to use the handheld device here or the next size up, putting that on your gut can improve the gut microbiome. And that's actually
IR.
Exact. With that, you could probably do both, because there are some organs or stuff that's a little superficial. But I mean, to your point of wanting to get deeper near infrared, for sure. But there's been research this year and last year showing they're able to help with like anxiety, stress, and Parkinson's by treating just through the gut and not even through the brain, because of the gut-brain axis.
And
so that's
serotonin production.
Yeah, exactly.
Fascinating.
So there.
Wow, that's so fascinating. Okay, so it seems like for skin, it's red light only. For brain, it's IR only. And for all other indications, it's pretty much both red and infrared.
If it's neurological, meaning like nerves anywhere in your body, spinal cord, brain, or joints, just things that are really deep, unless they're like in your fingers or something that are superficial, but all other joints like, your elbow, shoulder, hips, whatnot, you'd want to do near infrared only. But in general, combo for most other things. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, but I mean, that's a pretty good,
just a guideline
structure.
to go by. Yeah. Okay. And you can download the ebook for more guidance on that one. Okay. So I kind of know the answer to this, but I wanted you to touch on it. So Ben Greenfield loves to talk about how red light helps when he applies it to his testicles, often while he's on his podcast, it helps boost testosterone. So what does the research say, and what have you heard or experienced in feedback from your customers and your clients?
Yeah, I love Ben Greenfield. And really, that's where I first heard of red light therapy years and years and years ago. The research, there is none, at least to my knowledge. So that's why.
Will it hurt you to try?
It could.
Okay.
Because, I mean, the testicles are a very sensitive organ and tissue. The point being, you certainly wouldn't want to do excessive light treatments to an organ that has so much potential or implications, correct? So there's so many precautions in do it at your own risk type of thing, not to like wave so many red flags, but at the same time, be careful because the tissue down there, like the skin is so thin, you probably would want to do red light versus near infrared, but also you want to keep your dosage relatively low, just like doing a skin treatment, because you just wouldn't want to do excessive treatment down there. Again, that's just like without any research, that's just me being conservative or safe. But to answer your question about the potential, that's not to dog on Ben Greenfield or say it can't happen. My point is, there's a lot of anecdotal evidence out there that it does help. There just isn't any, hard and fast scientific research yet. I really hope that there's some stuff in the works and stuff will come out soon showing the benefits. I think there's without a shadow of a doubt there are benefits. We just can't say this piece of research proves it. So Ben Greenfield touts it. I think Aubrey Marcus does. I've had a major league pitcher who showed me his Wellness FX, and he pointed to a place where he started using red light therapy, and then there was a massive inflection point of his testosterone levels. Like all before that, it was like the low 500s, just kind of like dribbling on. He said he started using red light therapy here, and it was just a massive spike upwards up into like the 700s.
And it stayed.
And so, and there's been a couple of other people that have had other positive anecdotes. So you have enough of these anecdotes, and it's like, well, there's something going on here. Again, we just need research to refine the protocol to make it safe and effective. But and that's why I don't have a protocol in my ebook. It's just there's nothing there yet. There is potential, but that's kind of where we are right now.
Yeah. I mean, and most studies are kind of guided by pharmaceutical companies. So there's really no one who has the incentive to do a study with all the measuring that goes on and the controlling of it. But that's interesting. The only thing I am curious about as I'm hearing you talk is the heat, because sperm like a certain temperature and it's cooler than the regular body temperature. So
that'd be another reason to use red versus near infrared.
Yeah. Okay. Just to limit the heat production, especially if you want to be fertile and try to have children or something.
Yep.
Okay. Really, really cool. I think we covered everything. What about eye health?
Aha. Yes. That's another one that can be a little touchy subject because it's such an important organ. And the light is so bright that yes, as a provider of devices, I'm gonna, provide protective goggles. But there's so much potential benefits for eye health when red and near infrared light is utilized correctly. And just like the skin, and probably the testes, the dosage is quite low compared to everything else, which is why there's this semi-safety concern when people are, touting eye health and red light therapy. You don't want people going home and staring into the panel for 10 minutes because the dosages they're using in the research are way lower than your common treatment, let's say for just general health and wellness. But the point being, there's an article that just came out a day or two ago from researchers in UCL that were just following up on their previous research showing that looking into red light for 3 minutes, again, very low dosage, we're talking a third of the power of these panels.
Just red or not with infrared?
Correct, just red.
Okay, just red. Okay.
Just red for 3 minutes once a week, and it had to be in the morning, once a week, and it led to a 17% increase in like color perception, sometimes upwards of 20, but it just led to increased eye health, again, 3 minutes once a week. So the research brought up two things. A, yes, red light does help for eye health. B, it doesn't take very much. C, timing is important, because the second part to that study was they also did 3 minutes of red light in the afternoon, no benefits. So now we're starting to get into this realm of mitochondrial or red light therapy research where timing is going to have an implication. And I get that question all the time. And right now my answer is, for the most part, unless you're trying to help with circadian rhythm, just do it when you can. Everyone has a busy schedule. So if you're like trying to treat your brain or mental health, you're trying to treat some sort of like you rolled your ankle or something, just do it when you can. But like this research is pointing out, timing may or may not play a role, and it's because of the mitochondria. I think they said that it's the mitochondria have like different shifts or shift work, meaning like in the morning, the mitochondria in the eye seem to be very receptive to red light, but by the afternoon, those same mitochondria are not as receptive to red light. So timing does play a role for eye health.
That's really interesting. What about if you're using red light to help with sleep? Is it worth doing at night or?
Yeah. And so again, that still has to be teased out in the research.
Mm-hmm.
What I tell people is that you need to figure out if you're more energized or relaxed by red light therapy. Because if you're relaxed by red light therapy, then by all means do it, relatively close to bed. But if you're energized, then you kind of need to decide how many hours before bed you should do it so you're not energized. Or maybe you're in between, or maybe you're non-different, but you need to figure out or make sure that you're not energized if you're going to do it like 30 or 60 minutes before bed.
Okay. And red light only or both, near and?
For circadian specifically, or for sleep?
Mm-hmm. For sleep.
For sleep, you'd want to do both, because I think your eyes perceiving the red and then your brain getting the near infrared would be a good 1-2 punch.
Okay.
And that also brings up a good point, because BioLight, my company, just finished this past summer a research study with BioStrap Labs, where we went into the study. We had 25 participants using the full body treatment. They did 10 minutes in the morning of red and near infrared light, 10 minutes in the evening of red and near infrared light. And we were kind of looking to see what would happen with sleep, but the results we got weren't really sleep specific. And what was cool about this study with BioStrap is that they're measuring biometrics like heart rate variability and different things like that other research has never looked at. Again, no other research I've seen has looked at heart rate variability specifically. And we didn't get statistically significant results. It was about as close as you could get without being it for sleep specific. But the results that we did get that were jaw-dropping was that instantaneously with one session, you're increasing your heart rate variability by 122%. You're dropping your stress index by a third, so about by 30%. And that's just with every single treatment you do.
Wow.
You're physiologically getting these results. So the point being, with red and near infrared light, you're tapping into your parasympathetic nervous system. You're calming your body down almost instantaneously.
Okay, so you're seeing results pretty quickly. Because I was going to ask you, if you're preconditioning before your workout, like how quickly can someone expect to see results?
I've heard from people that do this, like the big bodybuilders or athletes or whatnot, within that first session, because again, your mitochondria is going to have more energy to produce the, muscle strength and power and endurance during the exercise. But then your body's also going to have more energy to kind of flush out the lactic acid and all those other things. So you're not as sore post-workout. So not only do you get a better workout, you get a quicker recovery.
Oh, that's beautiful. Okay. So before we close out, because I know we're short on time, I just want to clarify for the listeners, because I know that you get what you pay for with this technology, and it's not inexpensive, but it's a worthwhile investment. And the dollar cost average over every day that you're using it actually ends up being quite low because they last a long period of time. And I want to educate people why shortcuts and getting light bulbs painted red are not equivalent to what we're talking about here.
Light bulb painted red. I've never heard of that before.
Oh, they're out there.
Yeah, I've never heard of that.
I've seen them.
Yeah, so light bulbs, let's just start with light bulbs. Light bulbs aren't going to have a high enough light irradiance, which is like the scientific term for light power, to produce these therapeutic results. Or your treatments would just be excessively long to reach the same dosage. Okay. So these panels or these devices have a very high light irradiance. With these cheaper products, let's say that are half or a third of the price that are like on Amazon, you have to wonder what the safety specs are like. And when I'm talking about that, I'm talking like EMF emission and light flicker that's imperceptible to your eye, kind of like fluorescent lights.
Okay.
The higher the light flicker, you're going to have like those headaches, migraines, eye strain, poor concentration. So between, light flicker and EMFs, why expose your body to more of that than you need to when you're investing in a health and wellness product? So, I mean, those are the two big ones is the light irradiance and then the safety factors.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Very good. Okay. Wonderful. So, lastly, like, where can people find you? How do you like to connect? And yeah, all that.
Yeah. So I'm pretty easy to find, on Instagram, whether it's biolight.shop. I'm responsive to all the DMs through there, or my personal account, Dr. Mike Belkowski. And, the website's, biolight.shop.shop. LinkedIn, you can find me, Mike Belkowski. I'm constantly on all those different platforms, and I love interacting with people who have questions, because again, this is a relatively new space. There are going to be a lot of questions. People just want to find out so they can, better improve their health and wellness. So I'm more than happy to help and answer anyone's questions.
Great. And everyone can tune into the Red Light Report to hear more with Mike. And then can we get a copy of that ebook to share with listeners in the show notes?
Yeah, I can send that your way if you don't have it already.
No, I don't. Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here. I loved having you.
Yeah, Jen, my pleasure. It was a fun talk.
Thanks.